DMR deploy. We're trying to decide whether that's something out of Alien or Sesame Street.
With this tiny satellite, a new branch of space technology was born. Today, satellites are getting smaller. These prototype communication satellites are the orbiting equivalents of laptop computers. Though they recall the days of Sputnik, microelectronics make them sophisticated robots.
Today, a 500-pound satellite can do what 8 or 10 years ago required perhaps a 3,000-pound satellite. And it can be done at much lower cost than that 3,000-pound satellite from 10 years ago.
As a child, David Thompson was inspired by a new age. From backyard creations came new visions about space.
I got it! And that's what we were about to test.
Today, Thompson runs a growing aerospace company built around a concept he calls microspace.
Microspace systems are probably best defined by a philosophy of smaller, faster, cheaper.
Like computers, satellites are becoming more affordable.
Microspace systems really promote a decentralized approach to doing things in space. You don't have to be a major government agency or a huge telecommunications company to use space anymore. Somewhat over half the people on Earth have never seen or used a telephone. In Africa alone, there are over 100,000 small villages that have no means of communicating with the world outside the confines of their village other than through human messengers. By driving down the cost, small satellites can all of a sudden open up the world to the people that live there.
Crop and weather forecasts may soon reach African villages across satellite networks powered by the sun. But access to the high ground is not limited to communications.
Small satellite systems, because they are inherently low cost, allow countries that couldn't afford a $100 million class remote sensing satellite to build a $5 or $10 million satellite specifically designed to collect environmental data or to carry out some other mission which is of special interest to the sponsor country.
No mission is more urgent than monitoring rainforest destruction. To understand its consequences in the Amazon, scientists must collect data across almost 2 million square miles of forest. To help measure deforestation across this vast region, the Brazilian government has built a small satellite.
Is this TVC?
Yeah, they were actuated yesterday with the Taurus.
Thompson's company will put the Brazilian satellite into orbit with a revolutionary rocket called Pegasus. Pegasus uses a runway for a launch pad. Riding piggyback on a B-52 bomber, Pegasus launches small satellites at a lower cost than a conventional rocket.
I think over the next 10 years, it's likely that 5 or 10 countries will develop communications, reconnaissance, weather forecasting, and perhaps navigation capabilities based on satellites. The technology is diffusing more widely around the world.
At 40,000 feet, Pegasus takes charge. Another satellite will soon orbit the Earth, helping to open the doors of space to the world. Before the Gulf War, Scuds were glorified in the streets of Baghdad. In the next decade, more than 20 nations may be armed with similar missiles. As military technology spreads, orbiting Sentinels can monitor the proliferation of weapons in a changing world.
If everybody has got a reconnaissance platform up there and everybody can see what everybody else is doing, it really inhibits you from doing something very dirty and very sneaky.
And it will reduce the likelihood of war, especially surprise attacks. But I don't go so far as to say that because of these systems, wars are going to become obsolete. I think some people are determined to attack their neighbors no matter what.
In the wake of the Cold War, conflict may now erupt on any continent. Military forces must prepare to deploy quickly around the world.
We're going away from this idea of global warfare to a world that has instability, that military application of force may be required, such as it was in Iraq. I think space systems become more important in our military options. They give you the advantage to move very rapidly all around the world and have applications across the Earth.
At Fort Carson, Colorado, troops rehearse for the combat of the future. Special forces dropped into hostile terrain mark enemy targets using navigation satellites.
All right, we got 3 up already. Grid 084685. 084685.
With a handheld transmitter, their position is relayed to the commander using a small satellite overhead.
This is Juliet 29er.
They're already covering it. Wait.
Communication reduces the chaos of war, and precise coordinates protect advanced forces from friendly fire. Through space, information is decentralized across the battlefield.
For many years, space was sort of for the cocktail circuit in Washington. The high-ranking people in the administration and the military used what space system gave them for their planning, for their decisions. Today, space is getting right down to the foot soldier, to the sailor, and to the airman in the field.
For the United States military, satellites can be used as orbiting gun sights against targets anywhere on Earth. In the Gulf War, the high ground was theirs, but in the future, they may have to fight to keep it.
Well, there's no doubt in Desert Storm, we had the advantage in terms of space capabilities, and it served us admirably. People are going to learn lessons from Desert Storm other than Americans, and they're going to say what they can do. And already we're seeing a proliferation of things, offensive weapons, missiles. I think it's going to be a natural outgrowth, unfortunately, of warfare, that warfare in space will be conducted. Probably the military commander of the future is going to need some capability to conduct anti-satellite operations, for example, to deny the enemy the use of space against his forces in order to save the lives of his own people. And if one nation can do it, then the other nation has to figure out some way in order to protect its satellites.
NCA, this is Triple C. Oh. I'd like permission to enable our space-based weapons so we can knock this down early.
Triple C, be advised, all weapons systems are in a battle-ready mode.
To create space defense strategies like Star Wars, a new battlefield is now being tested. With computer simulations, satellites are deployed against missiles with multiple warheads to study how robotic warriors might engage in bloodless combat on the high ground.
Okay, we have weapons with authority. I'd like to enable some VPs to shoot this thing down. We've currently selected Pro A1. Let's see if we can get this as soon as we can. Looks like I might be a little late for VPs.
In one strategy, an armada of small interceptors patrols the perimeter of space. From this concept, new technologies are evolving. Once operational, Pegasus rockets could launch these small satellites on a moment's notice from runways around the world. From the high ground, lasers could destroy distant objects with a beam of light. These weapons are now being developed inside a giant vacuum chamber that simulates outer space. For a brief instant, a 10-inch beam of light will generate power comparable to the space shuttle engine. The event will be viewed safely from a control room.
Shutters closed. Verify the MSA vac. Okay, run timeline. Roger.
The cost and feasibility of putting weapons like lasers into space have slowed their development, but for the military, their purpose is not in doubt. Such technology stands on the brink of a new era.
All of us would love to avoid weapons everywhere in the world if we could. You know, last thing a military guy wants to do is go fight a war. However, weapons get there, and no matter what part of the world we're in space, out of space, under the water, on land, weapons get there.
The type of perspective that you develop by participating in and benefiting from the space programs does not lead to wanting to put weapons up there. It's a violation of the whole concept of this worldwide perspective, which says, you know, mankind has been drawn closer together.
Someday you'll see someone put a weapon in space, be it a bomb, be it a bullet, be it a rock or something, that'll drop on the ground and hurt somebody on the ground. And I think that's the way mankind moves.
It has a psychological significance to us. After all, heaven is up there somewhere, and you don't want to put weapons in heaven.
But if Americans are dying on the battlefield because this enemy satellite is flying over them every hour and a half and telling them where they are, I think the American public would say, hey, I would like that satellite taken out. You wouldn't allow an aircraft to do that over your troops. Why a satellite?
You could imagine a similar argument having taken place when airplanes were invented. And people would say, look, you can go off into the heavens in this beautiful airplane and write a poem like McGee did on, you know, how wonderful it is to be up in the air and flit from cloud to cloud. And yet it didn't happen. And we put weapons in the air, and they became the most destructive instruments ever. Why not expect space to go the same way? It's our last chance to keep a medium free of military activity. And it would be a defeat for the optimists of the world if weapons were put in space.
In one generation, humankind has unleashed the powers to cross the threshold into space. Will the nations of the world use these powers to dominate the new high ground? Or can this technology be used to fulfill the promise of another vision? A vision that unites all people as inhabitants of planet Earth.